I, 34, female, never thought I'd be writing about this, but here I am. 5 years ago, my sister disappeared from our lives. It wasn't a sudden event or something that shook the family at first. I suppose we all saw it coming in a way. My sister, let's call her Lauren, was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. She had the looks, the charm, and seemingly the perfect life. I was more of the shadow behind her, quiet, studious, never drawing much attention. It had always been that way. Lauren and I were never close. As children, we lived in two different worlds, even though we shared the same house and the same parents. She was popular, always surrounded by friends, while I preferred books and small, close-knit friendships. In school, I remember watching her from afar, wondering how she managed to be so effortlessly charming, always at the center of attention, while I could barely make it through a conversation without stumbling over my words. It was like we were wired completely differently. The distance between us only grew as we got older. By the time we reached adulthood, it was like she didn't see me at all. She'd brush off my attempts to talk, and eventually I stopped trying. Our relationship was cordial but indifferent, like acquaintances who happened to share the same last name. I always hoped that one day things might change. Then, out of the blue, Lauren cut off contact with everyone. She vanished without a trace. No one knew why or what had happened. It wasn't dramatic, though. There were no big blowouts or confrontations, just silence. My parents were heartbroken, of course. They sent her messages, tried calling, and even sent emails, but there was no response. After months of trying to get her to open up, they gave up. It wasn't that they didn't care, but they had no choice but to wait until she came back on her own terms. I think they thought she'd eventually find her way home. This might make me sound awful, but for me, her disappearance wasn't as painful. I had never really felt connected to her, so life went on as usual. I was in a completely different place in life by then. I met and married my husband Zane about a year after she left. He was everything I had ever hoped for in a partner. Kind, supportive, hardworking. We built a good life together, settled into a comfortable routine. We tried for children early on, but after years of tests and heartbreak, we realized it wasn't meant to be. It was difficult, I won't lie, but we had each other, and that was enough for me, or at least I thought it was enough. 5 years passed with no word from Lauren. Then, one day, she suddenly returned. No explanations, no apologies, just back as if nothing had ever happened. My parents were overjoyed, of course. They welcomed her with open arms like a prodigal daughter returning home. It was as though the years of silence didn't matter to them. I wanted to be happy for them, but something about the whole thing felt off. She had no interest in reconnecting with me. Despite reuniting with the family, her focus seemed to be solely on my parents, and I was fine with that. After all, we'd never been close. I figured we'd go back to our usual dynamic and I wouldn't have to worry about her invading my life. But then something changed. About a month after her return, Lauren started reaching out to me. It wasn't the warm, sisterly connection I had longed for all those years. Instead, she seemed to be suddenly fascinated with my husband. She wanted to talk, asked lots of questions about Zane, and expressed interest in getting to know him better. At first, I didn't think much of it. Zane is friendly and he always tries to see the best in people. So he encouraged me to give Lauren a chance. I hesitated, unsure if she was sincere, but eventually I agreed. After all, maybe she had changed. We started meeting up occasionally, her, Zane, and I. It wasn't like we were becoming best friends overnight. At first, it was awkward. We didn't have much in common, and the conversations felt forced. But over time, Lauren and Zane seemed to hit it off. They would joke around and talk about things I wasn't particularly interested in, like some obscure sports or her world of high-end fashion. I didn't mind. I was just happy that she was trying to be a part of my life, even if it was through Zane. I thought maybe this was finally the beginning of the relationship we had never had. I was naive, though. I see that now. One day, Lauren suggested that she and Zane could work together on some investment ideas. I didn't see the harm in it. After all, Zane was financially savvy, and I figured Lauren's return might finally give us a chance to reconnect as sisters. But soon, their conversations shifted away from investments to personal topics. They texted more frequently, at first during the day, but then it escalated to late night messages. It wasn't long before I began feeling like the third wheel in my own marriage. Lauren's presence was constant. She was always around, inserting herself into everything Zane and I did. It got to the point where even our weekends, once reserved for just the two of us, involved Lauren in some way. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself that this was a good thing. We were finally building a relationship after all these years, but deep down, something felt off. Then the cracks began to show. The tipping point came when I overheard them talking late at night. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the walls in our house aren't thick. They were talking in hushed voices about things that weren't related to work at all. Lauren mentioned something about feeling closer to Zane than ever before. And Zane, instead of setting boundaries, seemed flattered. My stomach churned as I realized what was happening, but still, I didn't confront them. I convinced myself that maybe I was reading too much into it. Zane loved me, and Lauren wouldn't do that, would she? Lauren also started texting Zane late at night, sometimes sending him memes or articles. It was nothing too serious at first, or so I thought, but soon their conversations grew more frequent. I didn't think much of it. I trusted Zane completely. After all, he was my husband, and we had been through so much together. Years of trying to have children, endless doctor visits, and late night talks about what our future would look like without kids. The idea that something could be happening between them never crossed my mind. Zane had never given me a reason to doubt him, until, of course, I found out about the affair. It wasn't some grand revelation or dramatic discovery like you see in movies. There were no explosive confrontations or screaming matches. I stumbled upon it by accident one afternoon. Zane had left his phone on the kitchen counter and a message from Lauren popped up. I wasn't trying to snoop, but something about it made me uneasy. I opened the conversation and there it was. A string of messages far more intimate than I could have ever imagined. They had been seeing each other for months, right under my nose. I remember standing there staring at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. But that wasn't even the worst part. He admitted they'd been having an affair for months. But worse than the betrayal itself was the reason why. Lauren had promised him something I couldn't give him, a child. She knew exactly how much it hurt that Zane and I couldn't have kids, and she used that, offering him the one thing I couldn't, knowing full well how much he wanted to be a father. Zane, blinded by his desire for a family, had fallen for it. He told me Lauren was pregnant and that he thought this was the best solution. How could I ever trust him again? I was devastated, but that wasn't the worst of it. Over the next few days, I learned Lauren had been plotting this for months. She knew about Zane's success and how much he was worth. She knew about our struggles to conceive and had used all that information to manipulate him. It was all a calculated plan. Lauren, who had shown no interest in my life before, suddenly reappeared with one goal in mind: to destroy my marriage and take what she thought she deserved. She, of course, didn't apologize. In fact, she seemed completely unbothered by the whole thing. She acted as though she had done nothing wrong, like it was perfectly natural for her to swoop in and take what was mine. When I confronted her, she shrugged, as if to say, "It is what it is." My parents, to my utter disbelief, sided with her. They told me it was a complicated situation and that I should try to understand. Understand? How could they expect me to understand this? I had lost my husband, my family, and my chance at having a child, all in one fell swoop, but somehow they expected me to make peace with it. I couldn't stay with someone who had betrayed me so deeply, who had chosen my sister over me. It was the hardest decision I had ever made, but I knew it was the right one. I packed my bags and left that same night. As for Lauren, she went on with her life as though nothing had happened. She and Zane stayed together and they now have a child. When I confronted my parents, hoping they would finally see Lauren for who she really was, they shocked me again. They sided with her. They told me Lauren's pregnancy was a blessing and that I should understand how hard it must have been for Zane. They urged me to forgive them, to see this as a family matter that could be resolved with understanding. I was speechless. The golden child could do no wrong in their eyes, even when she had ruined my life. I packed my bags that night and left. There was no salvaging my marriage, and there was no longer any place for me in my family. Lauren had taken everything, my husband, my home, and even the support of our parents. But as painful as it was, I realized that leaving was the best thing I could have done. And here's the bombshell. A few weeks after I left, I learned that Lauren had lied. She wasn't pregnant. The child she had, promised Zane, something she used to drive a wedge between us, never existed. It was all an elaborate plan to trap him. When I heard the news, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with disgust. For all the hurt she caused, Lauren had never been after love or family. She was after control, and she used whatever means necessary to get it. Zane found out the truth only after I had already moved out. According to a mutual friend, Zane confronted Lauren when she kept postponing doctor's appointments and avoiding discussions about the pregnancy. Finally, in a heated argument, she admitted everything. The pregnancy had been a lie, a way to secure Zane's commitment. She had banked on his desperation to become a father, knowing how badly he wanted it, and for a while it worked. But once the truth was out, Zane was devastated and furious. But the damage didn't end there. While Zane had been caught up in Lauren's web of manipulation, she had systematically drained his accounts. She had convinced him to give her access to his finances, telling him it was for our future child, and using their supposed upcoming parenthood as a way to justify large withdrawals and expensive purchases. Zane trusted her, and in return, she took everything. By the time he realized what had happened, it was too late. Lauren had cleaned out his savings, used his business connections to further her own interests, and left him in massive debt. She didn't just break him emotionally, she broke him financially too. To make matters worse, she severed ties with him the moment he found out. One of my cousins told me that Lauren vanished once again, this time with a trail of money. My parents, still blind to her manipulation, didn't seem to care about the fallout. They were more concerned with Lauren's disappearance than the fact that she had completely destroyed Zane's life. My parents' loyalty to Lauren remained unwavering. They couldn't or wouldn't see her for who she really was. To them, she was still the golden child, and Zane was collateral damage. As for Zane, he tried reaching out to me. He wanted to explain, to apologize, to seek redemption. But I couldn't bring myself to listen. I had already been through enough, and no apology could undo the pain and betrayal I felt. He had chosen Lauren over me, destroyed our marriage, and allowed himself to be manipulated by my sister's lies. Even if Lauren had deceived him, he was still complicit in the affair, and the betrayal that tore my life apart. And then the messages from relatives started pouring in. Apparently, Zane had gone to my parents for help, and in turn, they had reached out to extended family members, painting me as someone who was unwilling to forgive. They spun the story in a way that made Zane seem like the victim. Yes, Lauren had hurt him too, but in their eyes, I should have been more understanding. They expected me to work things out with him now that the truth about Lauren had come out. According to them, Zane was heartbroken, penniless, and had learned his lesson. They told me that since I never had children, maybe now was the time to try and reconcile, to give Zane a second chance. It was absurd. They seemed to think that because Lauren had duped both of us, we were somehow in the same boat, as if our shared betrayal should unite us. But they ignored the fact that Zane had chosen to betray me first. Lauren's deception didn't absolve him of the choices he made. He was an adult who allowed himself to be swayed by her lies. He broke our marriage long before he found out about Lauren's fake pregnancy. The pressure from my relatives didn't let up. They sent me long texts, making me feel guilty for not responding to Zane's calls or messages. They said I was being cold-hearted and unforgiving. Some even suggested that I should feel sympathy for Zane, since Lauren had taken advantage of his vulnerability. The irony of it all was too much to bear. Zane's vulnerability? What about mine? A few days ago, I got a message from my mom, who has stubbornly refused to see the truth about Lauren. She told me that Zane deserved a second chance because he was just a man who made a mistake, and that I should be the bigger person. She hinted that if I didn't forgive him, I might regret it one day, and that maybe now that Lauren was out of the picture, we could start fresh. A fresh start? With the man who shattered my trust and destroyed everything we built together? They don't seem to understand that I'm not willing to pick up the pieces of a broken marriage simply because Zane was conned by my sister. They think I should forgive and forget, but they have no idea what it felt like to be betrayed by two of the closest people in my life. Zane allowed Lauren into our lives, and when things fell apart, he had the audacity to play the victim. Now, every time my phone buzzes, I'm reminded of the fact that I'm expected to show compassion for someone who had none for me. Zane is in a bad place financially and emotionally, but that doesn't change what he did. It doesn't erase the months of betrayal and lies, and it certainly doesn't mean I should go back to a man who chose someone else over me. So here I am, once again, questioning myself. Am I wrong for not forgiving Zane? Should I give him a chance like my family is urging me to? Or am I justified in cutting ties with him, even though Lauren lied to both of us? AITA for refusing to forgive my ex-husband, not wanting to reconcile, despite learning that my sister faked her pregnancy and ruined his life. Update 1. Hi guys, it's been a couple of days since I posted and I didn't expect the amount of attention it would get. I was just trying to vent my frustrations and find some clarity, but it's been overwhelming reading all the messages of support, advice, and even criticism. I've taken a lot of it to heart, and it's been both comforting and challenging to process everything. Since my post, the situation with Zane has only become more complicated. After ignoring his calls and messages, I thought maybe he'd finally back off and realize that I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. But he hasn't. In fact, his attempts to get in touch have increased. He's been trying harder than ever to explain himself, and I've gotten several messages from him filled with long, rambling apologies saying that he was deceived by Lauren and didn't know what he was doing at the time. He keeps insisting that now that Lauren is out of the picture, we can fix what's broken between us. It's painful to read his messages because it's clear that Zane is in a really bad place. I know him well enough to recognize that he's not coping well with everything that's happened. His business is in shambles. He's lost most of the money he worked so hard to build. He also seems emotionally wrecked from learning the truth about Lauren's lies. But at the same time, I can't just forget how his actions have affected me. He didn't just make a mistake, he consciously chose to betray me, even if Lauren had a hand in manipulating him. There's a part of me that feels sorry for him, but I'm still so hurt and angry that I can't imagine trying to fix things now. In addition to Zane's constant attempts to reach me, my family has continued to apply pressure. I've had calls from my parents and even a few aunts and uncles all urging me to reconsider my decision. They keep saying that now that the truth is out, I should find it in my heart to forgive Zane and move forward. They've gone so far as to say that maybe Zane and I are meant to be, and that this could be the chance to start over. It's frustrating because they seem to be completely ignoring the pain I've gone through, focusing instead on the idea of reconciliation as if that's the easy solution to all of this. I'm also starting to see how deep my parents' denial runs when it comes to Lauren. While they're upset that she lied and disappeared again, they've still managed to rationalize her behavior, saying that she's troubled and that I should have more empathy for her. It's unbelievable to me that they can still defend her after everything she's done. But I guess that's how it's always been with Lauren. She could do no wrong in their eyes, and it's clear that's not going to change now. It's exhausting trying to deal with their version of reality, and I'm finding it harder and harder to stay in touch with them because of it. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything that's happened. I wasn't sure if I needed it at first, but after the last few days, I'm realizing just how much damage this situation has caused. It's not just a betrayal from Zane and Lauren, but also the way my family has consistently failed to support me. In therapy, I've begun unpacking years of pent-up resentment towards my parents for always putting Lauren on a pedestal while leaving me in the shadows. It's been eye-opening, and while it's a painful process, I think it's something I need to work through if I'm ever going to move forward. For now, I've decided to keep my distance from both Zane and my family. I need space to think about what's best for me without being bombarded with their expectations and guilt trips. I've blocked Zane's number temporarily, just so I can have some peace and clarity. As for my parents, I haven't blocked them yet, but I've been avoiding their calls. I'm still not sure what my next steps are, but I know I can't keep going on like this, constantly feeling torn between doing what's right for me and giving in to their pressure. Update 2. A few days after my last update, things took a dramatic turn. I thought the worst was behind me, but I couldn't have been more wrong. As I told you guys earlier, Zane has been trying to reach out to me, constantly calling and messaging, asking for a chance to talk. I ignored him at first, but then I received a message from one of his friends. They told me that Zane was in a really bad place, financially, emotionally, and mentally. Apparently, he's been struggling to cope with everything since Lauren left him. He's drowning in debt, and he's been forced to sell our old house to cover some of the losses Lauren caused. Some of his friends, who are also his business partners, are unhappy with this incident and do not want to be associated with him. I wish I could say I felt something, sympathy, pity, or even a sense of justice, but I felt nothing. Then the real bombshell dropped. Zane's friend revealed that Lauren didn't just disappear after the fake pregnancy came to light. She didn't just leave Zane with nothing, she left him with something far worse. It turns out that she had been running some sort of financial scam while she was with him, using his name and his business as cover. She had been borrowing money from shady people, promising them returns on investments that didn't exist. When everything came crashing down, these people came looking for their money, and now they're coming after Zane. Zane is terrified. He's not just broke, he's in serious danger because of Lauren's actions. I was completely floored when I heard this. It was like the betrayal had somehow reached a whole new level, even after I thought there was nothing more they could do to hurt me. Lauren wasn't just after Zane's money. She was dragging him down into a world of illegal dealings and dangerous consequences, and now he's paying the price. Part of me feels like this is karmic justice. After everything he did to me, he's finally facing the consequences of his actions. But another part of me is shaken by the fact that things have escalated so far beyond just an affair. Lauren's actions weren't just about destroying my marriage, they were about completely ruining Zane's life. It's hard to process how deep her manipulation went and how blind we all were to it. I've been receiving even more messages from family members now, telling me that I would be a horrible person if I abandoned him right now, that he is really suffering, and that I should at least talk to him. They're worried for his safety, saying that he's in over his head and doesn't know what to do. Some of them are even implying that I'm partly responsible for his situation because I'm refusing to help him now that he's at rock bottom. I can't believe what I'm hearing. It's not my responsibility to fix this. It's not my job to save him from the mess he allowed Lauren to create. But the pressure is mounting. My relatives are making me feel like I'm being heartless for refusing to offer support. They keep bringing up the fact that I'm his ex-wife as if that somehow makes me obligated to step in and clean up this disaster. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, I know that Zane's situation is dire, and I don't want to be seen as someone who abandoned him in his darkest hour. But on the other hand, I can't forget what he did to me, and I don't feel like it's my responsibility to save him from the fallout of his own choices. I'm struggling to make sense of everything. The betrayal, the manipulation, and now this new layer of deceit. It feels like a never-ending nightmare. All suggestions are welcome. Update 3. Hi guys, a few things have happened over the past few days, so I thought I'd give you an update. First and foremost, Lauren is back. Not at my place, of course, but at my parents' house. I found out through my cousin who let me know that even though my parents had defended Lauren in front of me for so long, this time they were actually angry and disappointed with her. Better late than never, I guess. Apparently they were finally able to see through her lies. The truth about her fake pregnancy, the manipulation, how she treated both Zane and me has finally hit home. From what I've heard, Lauren isn't having an easy time with them. My parents have always been the ones to forgive and forget when it came to her, but it seems this time the damage was too great to sweep under the rug. They're furious about the shame and chaos she's brought into the family. Of course, they haven't reached out to me to apologize or acknowledge how wrong they were, but I can't expect that from them at this point, and I think they're too focused on dealing with Lauren, and honestly, I'm just relieved they're not trying to drag me back into the mess. Secondly, Zane and his family also got wind of Lauren's reappearance, and they've decided to make this a legal matter. They plan on suing her for theft, fraud, and whatever else they can pin on her. Turns out that while Zane was dealing with his emotional fallout, Lauren had been helping herself to his bank accounts and using his connections to further her own agenda. His family is furious and understandably wants some form of justice. I, on the other hand, have my own divorce proceedings to focus on, so I don't plan on getting involved in their legal battle. I just want to be done with it all. I know some of you might wonder if I'm happy that Lauren is finally facing the consequences of her actions, and in a way I am. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like a victory. There's no satisfaction in watching your family fall apart, no matter how toxic things have been. All I feel now is a strange sense of detachment. I'm not invested in what happens to her anymore, and that's a relief. I don't need to see her punished to move on. I just need her out of my life for good. On the brighter side, I've got some good news for myself. A few weeks ago, I applied for a job in another city. I wasn't sure I'd get it, especially with everything else going on in my life. But I just found out that I did. It feels like the universe is giving me the escape I need, not just emotionally, but physically as well. I'm looking forward to the move, even though it's going to be a big change. It's scary to think about starting over somewhere new, but at the same time, I feel like this is exactly what I need to finally put this whole chapter behind me. The job is in a city I've always loved, and I think it'll be good for me to focus on myself, my career, and building a new life. One where Lauren, Zane, and all the painful memories are nothing but in the past. As for Zane, I've made peace with the fact that our marriage is over. The divorce is moving along, and I'm working with my lawyer to make sure everything is handled as smoothly as possible. I have no interest in any kind of revenge or dragging things out. I just want a clean break. Once the papers are signed, I'll be free to walk away and never look back. I also want to take a moment to thank all of you who have been following my story and offering your support. Your comments and messages have been a lifeline during some of the darkest moments. Knowing that so many of you understand what I've been going through and that you've been rooting for me has meant the world. It's comforting to know that I'm not alone and that people believe I made the right choices even when my own family didn't. So thank you. Thank you for reading, for the kind words, the advice, and the virtual shoulder to cry on. I don't know what the next few months will bring, but I'm hopeful that this fresh start will be the beginning of something better. I'll be focusing on myself, my new job, and rebuilding my life on my own terms. For now, this will probably be my last update. I'm ready to close this chapter for good and move forward with peace in my heart. Wish me luck. And again, thank you all for being there through this journey. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.